Welcome to another great episode of the Beyond Normal podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Groom. I have a very special guest here by the name of Brittany Bogues. She is the founder and chief innovation officer for Bogues Group. They're doing some amazing things in the Charlotte area. As you know, this season we are focusing on the founders in my very own background being Charlotte, North Carolina. So I thought, why not have this incredible founder on to tell us a little bit about their journey into starting their own business. So without further ado, let's bring Brittany to the stage. How's it going, Brittany?
It's going well today. Thank you so much for having me.
Glad you could take a little bit of time with us here. Lots going on in the world. Everybody knows just what's been happening in terms of the environment around us. It's a hot season, whether you're looking at it from a political standpoint or even just Mother Nature giving us signs, right, at this time. So appreciate you being able to join us today. So, can you start us out by telling us a little bit about your journey into even before you founding a business, having something of your own? Like, what were you doing before that? Like, tell us a little bit about Brittany prior to starting the Bose Group.
Sure. When I was in college, I want to say my junior year, I discovered the world of PR and event planning. I didn't even know it existed. Doing an internship with the nationally syndicated radio station showed me that if nothing else, I definitely want to be in this field. Before I officially launched my first company, I worked in DC with Swanson Communication, and their main client was Floyd Mayweather. So it was a beautiful experience because I learned a lot about a different sport I had no clue about. I learned a lot about the foundational tactics and strategies you need for public relations, but I also got to work with a woman founder. And so seeing how she had to move and operate versus her male counterparts was a really great lesson for me. And so after that, I launched my own business. I was young. I thought it would work out. It did not. So I used those experience to parlay myself into a job with a couple nonprofits. And I learned some really good hard skills there, like fundraising, how to be an effective leader, and the importance of SOPs, standard operating procedures, and was able to now use that in my business that I have, Bogues Group, which has been around for almost 7 years.
Nice. You really painted the whole picture there. I'm curious, like what prompted you, like what were you seeing when you first started your very first business? Like how were you like what was your life like at that time where you said you wanted to take that gamble on yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely my first business. I was young, I was hungry, hustling, by any means necessary, making things happen. I feel like honestly, it was like such a cool time. I didn't know if I was doing something right or wrong, but it was all about failing fast and failing hard, so I can learn from those opportunities and make them opportunities instead of calling them mistakes. I'll definitely say that was what
Got
propelled
it.
me.
There is something about like the spirit of youthfulness, right? Like being in that space where you're okay with maybe eating like for me when I was like 22, 23, I was okay with eating ramen noodles, right? Because I wanted to have these experiences and be out and about with life. There is an advantage to that, I think, and so it's really cool to see you actually take that gamble on yourself at a young age. I'm curious, like, what was the most painful kind of experience with that first business? Like, what was that aha kind of that thing that you experienced that you still take with you to this day?
Oh my gosh. One of the biggest, I would say it's probably two things. Making sure you have the right people in the right seats at the right time was one of the biggest and best lessons I learned. And then also, I really learned, and I still carry it on very much today, like that lesson is the power of automation and having systems in place, systems and processes. I feel like my first business, we tried, but we really lacked those SOPs. And in this business, like we stand by them because when you're trying to grow and scale, it's all about how can I repeat this experience and make sure it's a great experience each and every time. And that's what I feel like um, my experiences taught me, and it showed me that it really does work when you have the right systems in
Hmm.
place.
I like that. I can imagine with me even starting Beyond Normal Media, there was no SOPs in place, standard practices. There was nothing documented. I was just going with it, figuring things out. Whatever revenue I could get early on, I was willing to take that gamble. And so I can imagine the conversations that you're having with some business owners now. You're probably opening up their eyes a little bit, right, to the value in having process and just like a rhythm and routine, because that is kind of something for whatever reason, the way that entrepreneurship and startup life is really portrayed to the world. That's something that seems like antithesis, right, of the startup journey. But businesses
Yeah.
that grow and scale have those things in place. So it seems like a no brainer, like for you to offer that type of solution to business owners now.
For sure. And so, like, that's actually why we created our course because most of our main clientele are established mid sized businesses that are looking to increase their visibility, increase their name recognition in various spaces. However, I know that the value of having a strong brand, having PR, having templates for those efforts as you're growing your business, because you will eventually get to the place that you can hire someone like myself. And so, my team and I, we are a champion for small business owners and entrepreneurs. So, we created a course that does just that. The course outlines the color psychology about creating your logo, how to create a cheap and free website, how to apply for awards, but also what are all the templates that you can already have in place that you can reuse for yourself so that you're creating your own SOPs in a
Mhm.
way.
Tell me a little bit about. Um, I talked a little bit about the bad that goes along with being a startup founder, right? But there's also good. There's things that excite founders, owners of businesses such as yourself. Like, talk a little bit, like, what was that, one of those first moments or one of the lasting moments where it felt good to offer the solution that you're offering to the world?
When I started, actually Bogues Group, I started because I was not gelling with the leadership at the nonprofit that I was at, and I just knew that I couldn't grow in this space, and it wasn't really good for my mental or physical health. So I just took a leap of faith and learned all the things from my first business and applied it to this one. And so I think the biggest thing that resonated with me was trusting myself, relying on faith, and getting that first client. I mean, it was exciting, and it was actually someone it was a she's a female real estate developer in Dallas, and she was all about creating brand visibility, and I was so excited that our company could do that for her.
Mhm. Yeah, that is, that first, like you mentioned, that first customer is just like, oh, a lot of founders tell me about that, like, when I have them on or I'm just having dialogue, just that first customer and that aha moment, the idea that you had is, like, coming to fruition, like, having that first check come in is just, oh my gosh. Oh,
Yeah, because it's all about finding your niche. When I started my first business, I thought athletes were a no-brainer and they would be my target audience, but I quickly realized, gosh, like that's a lot of competition. There aren't that many athletes. A lot of them are already signed to their agents. And with that, a lot of them believe that their agent does public relations. So there's a lot of education. There's so many different hurdles that come with that. So really reassessing who is our true niche audience and who can really benefit from our services, and that's what we came up with, those small business owners that are making, 10 to 20 million a month, I mean, a year, or those mid-sized companies that want to be seen like the big boys or big girls in their industry. That's our sweet
mhm.
spot. We help them get
So
there.
I'm curious, you mentioned mid-sized companies. Um, Typically, like, this excites me, right? The reason why, um, I think I said this on quite a few episodes of the podcast. I don't think there's enough Black business owners in the B2B space, like serving other business owners. And there can be instances where um, the way that you add value the most, it aligns with what people are willing to pay versus in I think B2C, it's a little bit more commoditized and you may not always you may not always get the value that you bring right fully, but I see that businesses right if there's a value to adding a solution, adding a software a lot of times they're just willing to pay it because you're saving them time, like you're doing something for their business they do not want to do. And so that's where I think the B2B, just with the skill set that I see Black founders have, I think there's a ton of value there. But I'm curious, like with you going after, like you mentioned, medium-sized businesses and even large enterprises as well, like how long does it take you to get some of these customers?
Yeah, so the procurement process or the life cycle is it's a lot longer with bigger retainer clients. So I would definitely say it's anywhere between 3 to 6 months to really do that process, go through all the different decision makers. Because as you know, in mid-sized companies and larger, there's typically between 5 to 8 decision makers and buyers that have to really, buy into what you're offering. So it's definitely a longer lead
Hmm.
time.
Hmm. Um, I'll be honest, here in procurement, I feel I'm in tech for my day job. Procurement is like my kryptonite at times, I'll be honest. Because you can get to the sale like talked about earlier, that first sale, but then procurement is like, wait, hold a minute. Oh, let's go through some of these hoops and hurdles. But I could see like the value, right? If you're coming in, your business is like SOPs, um, like you understand why some of these things are in place. So I'm pretty sure you have an appreciation for them. Let's go back to SOPs a little bit. Let's break this down in terms of like elementary. Somebody who's new to the topic, can you break it down fundamentally? What is the SOP? And maybe yeah, just like in terms of like the general
Sure.
elementary version of this.
Yeah, so SOPs are your standing operating procedures. So each businesses will look different based on your industry and everything like that. But essentially, it is your guide to all the various tasks of your role. So you're supposed to look at it and think of it as if I came to your job and I didn't know anything about your job at all, but you gave me this document or video or whatever platform you want to present it. I should be able to take your SOP and do your job based on your standard operating procedure. I should be able to walk through the objective. The SOP should have all the software login information I would need to access it, and then it then would take me through each step of how to do said task so that once it's done, it should give you a similar replica, if not the same thing, as if you were doing it yourself. Because the reason why companies and everything scale and grow so quickly is they found a way to multiply themselves. They found a way to jot down those steps so specifically that anybody can follow them and give them the same quality product as if they were to do it themselves. So I hope that helped.
Definitely does. I appreciate you breaking it down at that level. For someone such as myself, again, when I hear some of these terms, I get a little anxiety. But that definition definitely helped me out. I'm curious, like you mentioned, you're going after medium sized, maybe even larger enterprises. Like, what's an easy first iteration of an SOP for, say, a small business owner? Like, what does that look like if you're wearing multiple hats? Maybe you got one or two people that are on your team. Like, what does the first version of that look for some of the smaller entities out there?
So typically for smaller companies, you're the salesperson, you're the content manager, you're everything. So I think it takes a little bit of self-awareness. You have to figure out, okay, like out of all the things that I do, what are things that I'm really good at? What are things that I don't really love to do but have to do? And then figuring out from that list of what are the things I don't really love to do, and figuring out, okay, which out of these tasks can be delegated to somebody else to increase my time to do the things that I'm good at and also bring us in business. So, an example could be how you like your calendar managed. Do you want breaks in between your meetings? Do you want to block off Fridays for only doing your content creation? Whatever kind of schedule you're adhering to now, replicating that in an SOP. And then once you are ready to work with say an assistant or something like that, that is something you can easily delegate that you know is very important, but you already have a really clear process for yourself that the admin can easily come and view this and be able to help you and give you back time and hours
I
in
like
your
that.
day.
I'm curious. Um, you were talking about setting these up, noticing like what you're good at, and then just making sure there's a process in place just in case someone comes along and you add someone to your team where you start delegating. For me, I get excited, but I think others may not. Um, I think of SOPs and then I say, hey, can I feed this to AI? And it does some of my jobs for me. Uh,
That part,
what are your
yes.
thoughts on, what are your thoughts on how AI factors into some of this? Like, does it scare you? Like, what do you
Yeah.
see it as opportunity?
I embrace technology. I love it. I'm all for work smarter, not harder. So whatever tools that I can utilize to make my work faster, still amazing, and high quality, I will do. Whatever can save me time, whatever's more efficient. I think what you can and you want to avoid in the communication space is just relying on whatever copy or whatever content that they've created. Still use your expertise to fine tune it and craft it, but definitely use it for research and other base fundamental building blocks that you need to do the work that you already do.
Real big fan of that response. I appreciate that. The robots are coming, so we just got to figure out how to work well with them at this point. I want to go back to something you
That part.
mentioned in terms of recognizing what you're great at and other areas where there's opportunity. Like, what's an area of your business now that you've been running your business for what you said 7 years now? What's an area where you may have not had that experience previously, but you knew you had to spend a little bit more time there, or maybe even go out there and get an additional resource? I'll give my example first. Anything accounting, taxes, it scares the crap out of me. And so I'm always going to go to somebody when it comes to paying taxes and things like that because I don't ever want to owe Uncle Sam any money. So that's my example. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yes. I mean, we have a similar example. I know that I'm a very forward thinking, big picture kind of gal. So when it comes to as I grew my business, I realized the importance of literal administration task. How important it is to file things in the right places, how important it is to make sure that your task assignment tool is updated and everything's in the correct place. And so I similarly realized that I am not good at those things, but I know how important they are to a business. So how can I delegate this to someone? And that's exactly what I've done. Really work with an admin that can utilize all the SOPs and experiences that we're sharing, but also she's an expert in her space. So I don't really need to worry because it's allowed me more time to be an expert in the space that I am an expert
Hmm.
in.
You know what that admin? I've heard a couple founders have that very same reaction to having an admin, having someone who knows how to navigate scheduling and just all the things that come along with supporting a business owner. I'm actually seeing some elevation of like the role of an admin, right? I know some companies have it. It's like the chief of staff or somebody who's like kind of making sure things are flowing in the right direction. So that admin can at times, that's an underrated person to add to your team even early on, right? To free you up to do some of the activities that I think are more core to being a business owner, a founder, right? You're always going to probably own selling, um, delivering bad news, if I can say that that's a function in of itself, right? But those are some of the functions you can't get rid of. So figuring out some of those areas where you can have somebody come in, and I like what you said. They're really great at that. Like a great, yeah, a great
They're
admin is worth a
experts.
lot of money.
It really is. And it like as hard as it is to part with your money as a new business owner, you will realize that by identifying the things that you're not good at and somebody else is an expert in, it will give you more money. You will make more money from that because you've invested in yourself by giving your time back to yourself to focus on the things that you've seen drive business, drive activity, and also you're able to have support from someone in an area that you know that you definitely need support in.
So, like, how's it been building out your team? Can you talk a little bit about that? Just the team that you work with. Like, how has that process been finding the individuals that complement your skill set?
So, this is I recently, I guess in the last like probably 3 years or so, I've been doing a lot of like leadership development. And I realized, and also reading the book Traction, I realized that you really need to have company values. Once you have company values set, then it helps you guide how and who you hire. So yes, you're going to make some mistakes while you're hiring and building out your team, but at least you get closer to the mark of figuring out who a person is if you have some guiding core values to lead during that interview. Look at their responses based on the things that you said. So, for instance, like one of our core values is accountability. Um, and also a core value is passion, obsession. How do we translate that? We've seen in the type of work that we do, it requires a sort of obsession or passion. And so we typically ask somebody, okay, what are you obsessed with? What are you passionate about? Me personally, I love true crime anything, and I also collect glass figurines. But you know that I'm passionate about something, and it does translate into work. So we often use questions like that to help us guide, who would be a right fit for us. If they say, "Oh, I don't have one," then it's like, this person might not be a fit for us.
Interesting. So you want to know um, how they like what they spend their time on outside of work. Like what, like you said, that's an interesting question. I like that.
It's multiple. Of
Yeah,
course, we have
yeah, for
more
sure.
questions than that, but to your point, I wanna know how you are outside of work because, what you are outside of work really does blend into your work. I mean, most people are at their jobs enough that, like, it's more than they're at home. So, there's certain traits that are transferable, and I think that's, like, one of those.
Mm, I like that. I like that. Getting to know a little bit about your team for sure. I think that can be overlooked for a lot of founders, right? Because you're so like tunnel vision on a product and getting the first couple contracts and making sure you have the money to pay for the bills, right? Keep the lights on. I think that's important. But like you said, the team dynamic, getting to know the people that you're going to be working with is just as valuable to some of those other pieces.
Well, because 'cause you're leaning on them, you're trusting them, and also if you really have a commitment to excellence, which is one of our values, if you already exhibit that, then we can trust and know that whatever piece of work or collateral you come up with, you gave it your best and you were committed to making it excellent. And so it's a lot of traits and values like that that we look for because we know that our leadership, we're a lot of us are one on the Enneagram. So we do an Enneagram test, a DISC test, different assessments to figure out what's the best way to communicate with you and how does this align with the role that we're trying to
Mm.
put you in.
I'm curious. One of the things I noticed when I was looking at your website, there's a call out for your board of advisors. I'm curious, like you mentioned building out your team. Like, what do you look to those individuals for that's different than the people that you want to join your team and build out the product day to day?
Sure. So they say that you should never be the smartest in the room. And they also say that you should connect yourself with people that are in places that you want to go, where you're not at just yet, but where you want to go. And so that's how I look at our board of advisors. Each of them have their own skill set and are in a place that we're hoping to get to. And so they give us great advice and sound advice to figure out what is the next move for strategic planning and the next phase, next look at the business life
Mhm.
cycle.
It's important to have somebody there. I think we all have. I call them OGs. Like we all have some OGs, right? They have no idea what our career, like our core, like what we do day to day. But I just go. There's certain people you can go to for advice, right? And it's like they're gonna give it to you real. They're gonna make sure, hey, like keep your eye on the prize at the end of this, right? This isn't a sprint. This is a marathon. Like they'll ask you little questions. Usually my OGs, I go to them and it's something with life that's stressing me out and juggling family and business and all these things. And they ask a question and then it forces you to be like, oh, okay. I can just do this. Like it just calms it. And I think of advisors in that way, right? In terms of advisors for your business, there's advisors for your life. They do some things in parallel, similar things from what I've heard other founders tell me about having boards.
No, I totally agree with you. And I also have been really fortunate to have several different mentors in my life, and that I call, like you said, my life board of directors. And so, in being able to confide in them and seek their advice, if they do, what I love about my mentors is that they don't try to like give me quote unquote the typical advice. They give me more shared experience or life experience, giving me concrete examples of like when they did something and how it turned out for them. And I love that because it's one thing to like have someone give you like straight up advice, but it's another when they're able to do a life experience share that is truly applicable to what you're trying to problem
Mhm.
solve.
Yeah, I can see the value in that. Um, I am a uh, I am the parent of a 3-year-old toddler, and so I have to catch myself sometimes, like, don't do that. And then I think back, or like my mom was telling me, was like, you were doing the same thing at their age. Like, what are you talking about? Leave them alone. So it's good to have somebody who can like give you those experiences, like you said, to go along with the lesson that they're trying to maybe convey. There's power in that ability to tell those types of stories for sure. So
Exactly.
we touched on a lot. Like, what is the next couple of years for your business look like? Like, what's the big outrageous goal that you have for the business?
Yeah, so we are well, we're working on restructuring and scaling up so that we do eventually reach that mark of 1 million in annual sales. And so that is our big, hairy, scary goal that we're working to get to within the next 2 to 3 years. So we're really excited. And then also a really big goal of ours is to help at least 500 new entrepreneurs with their businesses through our courses and really see them not only increase their sales, but increase their visibility and structure of their
That's dope.
business.
How can folks stay connected, whether they want to leverage your services as one of your target customers, or even that initiative that you just said, the 500 small business owners?
Sure. So you can find us on the internet at boguesgroup.com, or you can find us online at Bogues Group across all channels. And then my personal handle is at
Got it.
Bogues.
You got both on lock. That's good. Uh, Yeah, I want to thank you for just coming on and sharing a little bit about your business. It really excites me seeing someone such as yourself doing what you're doing. B2B is where it's at. I sound like a broken record for my listeners, but there's tons of value to be unlocked there. So I want to thank you for coming on the platform. And the last thing, right, I want to pass it back to you. What's the last thing what do you want our listeners to take away from this conversation now that you shared about your journey into entrepreneurship and what you see in the future for your business? Like, what's that key takeaway?
Sure, I would say the key takeaway is bet on yourself, and it's okay to have a little bit of fear, but don't let that fear hold you back from making major moves that you want to do.
Mic drop moment. Thank you, Brittany, for joining us. And for those listening in, thanks for tuning in to another great episode of the Beyond Normal podcast. Peace.
Thank you.